What's going on, podcast listeners? My name is Michael Chernow. I am a restaurateur and lifestyle entrepreneur, and I am truly obsessed with living a life better than yesterday through wellness, fitness, and good vibes. I've always wondered if the drive to succeed is something we are born with, or if it's something that is made over time through grit, drive, and perseverance. I get to answer that question exactly, and the goal of this podcast is to talk with people that have absolutely crushed it in life and have inspired me to do the same. This is Born or Made. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Born or Made podcast, and my guest today is a really incredible guy that I was lucky enough to meet on his podcast. He has inspired many people doing the things that I love to do most, which is in the world of fitness, recovery, and better living. His name is Doug Bopst. He's an award-winning personal trainer. He is an author. He is a public speaker, and he is also a business owner. The thing I love most about Doug, which I really could relate to, was the fact that he came from a world of darkness and found a door to the light, and has really sort of made this incredible life for himself and the people around him through recovery and fitness. And it's a special path that I'm really excited to talk about because I have nothing but identification there. So, Doug, welcome to the show.
Mike, man, thanks for having me. And you got an incredible story too. And I so enjoyed having you on my show. And that episode, when it comes out, it's going to inspire a ton of people. And just love what you're doing, man. And excited to chat with you.
Thanks so much. The Born or Made podcast is a podcast that I have created not that long ago. But I really am interested in the topic of nature nurture. And that is ultimately what the Born or Made podcast is about, to try to figure out, or not figure out, but just at least talk about this idea of whether people like yourself, people who have inspired many and have come through amazing feats, whether they have been born with an innate or inherent talent or skill set that has given them an upper hand to get to where they are today, or if they just got to where they are today through grit, grind, and hustle. It's been a really amazing journey so far, because I would honestly say that it's about a 50-50 split. And so, I'm really excited to dig into your story, because typically the way we get to our sort of thought is through storytelling. And I know you have an awesome story. I didn't get your whole story from our conversation originally, so I'm really excited to hear it from the very beginning. And then I have a bunch of questions, because you are a personal trainer and a coach, and those things are, I'm sort of going to selfishly ask you some questions that I am always looking for the answers for, and I'm sure a lot of listeners out here are going to be excited to hear them from an award-winning personal trainer. Why don't you tell us about yourself, introduce yourself, and let's get into your story, man.
Today I'm a trainer, I'm a business owner, I'm a podcast host, I'm an author. But it wasn't long ago. I was in the depths of despair. I had a horrific Oxycontin addiction when I was incarcerated on felony drug charges back in 2008. I was having suicidal thoughts, thought my life was over. And I just was in a place where I had no purpose, no plan, no goals, and fitness saved my life. My cellmate was a guy who was like a more jacked version of Brad Pitt from Fight Club, right? We've all seen that movie. And just doing all kinds of crazy stuff, push-ups, pull-ups, and not just like the amount, like volume, like hundreds of pull-ups, like thousands of push-ups. And he was like, "You're gonna start working out with me one day." And I was just like, "Dude, have you seen me? Like, I could have been a model for Pillsbury. There's no way I'm working out with you." And I remember like one night, like after him just like begging me for a few days to try it out, I remember getting down to do a push-up, couldn't even do one for my feet, couldn't even do one for my knees, and could hardly walk. And I just remember sitting there, and he was just like, I'm like, "Why can't I do a push-up, man?" He's like, "Because you're fat." And that word made me cringe, not because, I mean, it was obviously pretty true, but I was called that a lot as a kid. And I just hated that word. And I just kind of swore to myself from that moment, I was never going to be called fat again. So he pushed me in there, and it just, things build off of each other, right? One thing leads to the next. I was able to do a set of 10 push-ups, run a mile by the time I left my 90-day sentence in jail. And it inspired me to really break myself free from addiction, change my habits, get into a health and fitness, way of living. And that kind of sparked, a transformation, a lot of other areas of my life too.
That moment when you said, I heard that word fat and it made me cringe because it brought up memories of my past and I just hate the word fat. Something clicked inside of you and you said you never want to be called fat again. And so you began to sort of march this path of better living.
Right.
Do you recall, are there any other moments in your life before this happened that you made a decision to sort of get after something? I mean, I know as addicts, because I'm also in recovery, we definitely put as much energy into using and drinking as we do now. Not all of us, but the ones who have come out of it with, a drive and ambition to be better. We put a similar amount of energy into that as we did to when we were using and drinking. But can you recall a moment in your life where you were able to flip a switch in a positive way before this situation in prison happened for you?
I mean, no, not really. I mean, I'm just trying to think back, and no, I mean, I was just the guy who I felt like I was just in quicksand. It was like job after job. It was, letdown after letdown. I had no luck with girls. I was getting bullied. I was always being cut from the sports teams, even though I love sports. I was the kid who was always like heavier and wearing husky clothes when I was a kid. And like the drugs, like just helped me self-soothe and self-medicate from that, like just numb me out from thinking about all the problems I had. And then when I started selling, which is what I actually was incarcerated for, was selling pot. I got busted with a half a pound of pot and a couple $1,000 in cash on Cinco de Mayo of 2008. That was like filling a void of like love and being wanted and needed, because my phone was blowing up all day, right? I didn't feel validated from other areas of my life. So like, internally I was empty. So when my phone's blowing up and people were wanting drugs from me, I'm like, wow, I'm needed. I'm cool. I'm cool. I'm cool. And as much as I try to think back and like, how did I try and flip a switch? It never came to me until like I hit that moment in jail where it was like do or die. Like I was either going to spend the rest of my life, in jail or dead, or I was going to make a decision in that moment to at least try a different way, because whatever way I had been doing for the past 21 years just wasn't working.
What was childhood like?
Traumatic, man. So my parents got divorced when I was 5, and it was a pretty rough divorce. Even till this day, they really don't talk to each other. So like you can imagine like what that kind of does as you're seeing that as a kid. And I'm not blaming them. They did the best they could in that situation. But it was just obviously very toxic, right? There was always tension growing up, like constant tension, fighting over like child support and court and all that stuff. So it's all I knew. And I was also like, back then, this is like, 25 years ago when they got to 26 years ago, divorce wasn't nearly as common as it is today, right? It was very like a lot of my friends, their parents were all together. So I was like looking at my situation, like, what's wrong with me? Why am I different? Like all these things. And then on top of that, I was getting bullied in school. I was getting told like I looked like I had Down syndrome because I was like a lot heavier than I am now. And I suffered a lot of other types of abuse too, everything, growing up. So I just was really looking to hide and numb everything out. And I didn't realize how much childhood and everything plays into everything as you're in your adulthood. I know you and I were talking about this on my show. But I got to a point, and when I started like actually realizing this, I was probably like, this is the last thing I'll say, and I'll let you kind of feed off of what I was saying. Like I was probably like 5 years into my recovery, and I had a lot of people that were like looking at me and they're like, wow, like I tell this story a lot. They're like, they used to say I look like Mark Wahlberg, the actor Mark Wahlberg. You're so like attractive and this and that. Like, why aren't you in a relationship? Like, why this, why that? And part of it was I was working on my career and I was working on, staying in recovery. And a lot of it was I still saw that fat Doug in the mirror. I still saw that kid who was miserable with himself. I still saw that kid who was being made fun of. I still saw that kid who was being shamed. And I didn't realize that that's what I was doing until I started doing some work on myself. And just anybody who's listening right now, to know that like it doesn't matter who you were as a kid. It doesn't matter who you were even 5 years ago. What matters is like who you are today and who you want to be like going forward.
Wow, man, we share a lot of trauma in our childhood. There's no doubt, and like you, I can't blame anyone for what I went through. As a matter of fact, I actually don't regret a single second of anything that I went through. And I also experienced physical, sexual, verbal abuse as a child. I don't know. I mean, you didn't get into the type of abuse that you sort of went through, but
Yeah, all the above.
I imagine it was similar to that. I don't blame anyone for it. And I think anyone also listening here, the blame game is probably the worst place for anyone to live. Living in a room filled with resentment between your two ears is just a terrible place to be, because it doesn't really affect anyone aside from you. And so when you were a child, do you remember escaping very young? I mean, what was your first escape mechanism? Was it food?
Probably food.
Mm-hmm.
It was like I didn't realize it now. I mean, then, but now it's like I look back and it was like I was just eating for pleasure. I was eating for comfort. I was eating just to, not even for nourishment, right? I was just eating to whatever felt good, whatever got me that hit. Plus, I mean, when you're called fat as a kid, you're told you're not allowed to eat certain foods. I mean, I was put on like some some restrictions. You like want to do stuff more, right? You want to eat the cookies more. You want to eat the cheesesteaks more and all that stuff. And then like it pivoted into pot, right? And like people ask me if like it was a gateway drug. I mean, it was definitely what got me started. I think the trauma and everything I went through was the gateway, and then I self-medicated with pot. So I started smoking when I was like 13, 14 years old, and it was just more of like an escape, right? Escape of reality. It felt like the monkey came off my back to be able to escape who like the Doug was, and the masks came off. And I'm like, wow, I can feel good about myself, my own skin now. I can feel at peace. I can feel like I don't have to worry about anything. And it wasn't even like I was chasing the high. I was chasing the numbing feeling of numbing the pain.
Mm. Do you think that you were born that way?
Mm. No, here's why. I can't say I was, because if my circumstances were different, I don't know if I would have responded that way. I don't know. I mean, I go back and forth about the whole genetics thing, obviously with addiction. Um, but I personally believe that addiction, at least in my experience, was a response to unhealed traumatic experiences and coping mechanisms to emotions that I didn't know how to regulate without an external source.
It's such an interesting topic as well, man. I think obviously I've been sober for a long time now, and I always question whether or not it was nature or nurture. My addictive personality. Um, I'm really blessed to know that 16 years later, I still, in every area of my life, I am a complete addict, and I don't partake in the bad stuff today. So it's a blessing that I'm able to get through life addicted to positivity, But I think I was born with this issue, because I remember, as early as probably 3 or 4 years old, and definitely I had a traumatic experience as a child, with my father and a number of other things. But I remember, 3, 4 years old, running into the kitchen in the middle of the night, waking up out of bed, running into the kitchen, grabbing a container of orange juice and swigging it down as fast and as hard as I could. I was addicted. I was addicted to it. And so I think it's a then there's also other alcoholics and drug addicts that I know that just simply come from awesome upbringings that just fall into this trap of escapism. But I think for people out there, the one thing that I've learned, not enough people talk about addiction. And I know it's becoming a larger topic today. But if you had to say something to the person that's listening, that's literally sitting at the edge of their bed, struggling, trying to figure out what is the next step, how can I get out of this terrible place that I put myself in on a regular basis, what would you say to them?
Wow. I mean, it's a loaded question. I mean, I think first just accepting and knowing that it's okay, that you are where you're supposed to be, and knowing that it's, at least being aware of it is a great first step, and knowing too, that you're not alone. I think that's one of the things is like we get caught up in the shame around addiction, and then the shame of the problem becomes bigger than the problem itself sometimes, right? And the shame of the problem keeps us in that same dark spot because we live in all this fear, like, oh, if I open up and tell my friend or tell my parents, like, what are they going to say to me? Or, if I get sober, get into recovery, what's my life going to look like? Instead of just knowing, like, all right, I have faith and belief that if I get into recovery and I stop using this stuff that's been completely crippling me my entire life, odds are my life will be better. And so that's like my biggest thing is like, accepting it and knowing it's okay. Like it's not, there's nothing wrong with you, right? But also knowing that if you want to make a change, you got to do it for yourself, right? I mean, I think I also, say too, you got to do it for yourself. There can be external things that drive that, right? There can be like saving a relationship or saving a job or your kids or your health scare. But ultimately, it's up to you to be like, boom, I'm making that decision. I'm never going back to that dark place. And so I would just invite people to know that just reach out, like ask for help. And with every decision you're making, from that point on, is it aligning with what you want for your future life? Is it aligning with who you wanted to be when you're 14, 15 years old, right? Because odds are like addiction isn't part of that. And even though it might not be your fault, it's your responsibility to kind of own that and do what's necessary and take risks to kind of get better. It's like we get crippled and stopped from like first just admitting the fact that we're struggling, right? Which is a big first step. And it's like, I always said to people, one of the biggest things that I had trouble with was admitting I was like a felon. And I remember somebody saying to me, Doug, if somebody judges you based on a mistake you made 10 years ago or 5 years ago, whatever, they're not meant to be in your life. Like, why would you want someone in your life who's judging you for a mistake you made? And it's the same thing with a drug addiction. Like, you're not a quote unquote screw up. You just screwed up. And that's the thing. I think people need to reframe that perspective because they label themselves as a screw up or as an F up or whatever you want to say. You can't like be defined by the choices you make. You can only be defined by the responses you make in response to those choices. You can't just let yourself be the victim, and I think that's what happens to a lot of people. And I'm not saying I never fell into that role because I did, but me being the victim in my addiction just got me into jail because I was just putting the blame on other people, waiting for my family to save me, waiting for the government, whoever. But I had to save myself, man. And it was like, it's a hard pill to swallow. And that's why I love fitness. And I don't think like, obviously, I'm not gonna tell somebody sitting on a couch, just go work out right now. I mean, that's not going to be the first step. It's obviously should be one of the steps at the beginning. But fitness allows you to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Fitness allows you to rebuild a positive community. Fitness allows you to set goals. Fitness allows you to see incremental progress into something big. And correct me if I'm wrong, that's what recovery is. You know what I mean? So that's why I think fitness is so instrumental in the ability to change.
I couldn't agree more. When you said fitness saved my life, one of the first things you said, it is absolutely, not only did fitness save my life, but fitness saves my life on a daily basis. Without fitness, I am truly Absolutely lost. I don't know what I would be. I don't know. I have no idea where I'd be without fitness because it's been a part of my life for the last 15 and a half years and an instrumental part of my life. And I think one thing that is left out of a large part of recovery practice is fitness. I think fitness could very well be the answer to the vast majority of people that are struggling to stay sober or struggling to get in, because focusing on spirituality, just focusing on, potentially if you're in a program, step work, just focusing on speaking to others that are dealing with the same issues, that's all really important and really good. However, if you're not fully immersing yourself into an active, like, daily hobby or habit, I do not believe that you are able to sustain happiness as an addict. I think that you have to truly you have so much energy that's been pent up and brushed under the rug and brushed under the bed for so many years, and you've treated your body so poorly that your body is just craving that drama on a regular basis. Like, once you give it drama, it just constantly wants more drama. It's like watching the news, like, you got to turn that news on to get that bad energy, And so I think when you remove that, you have to feed the body positivity. And from my experience, the best way to feed the body positivity is to plant wins that you have control over throughout your day. And the easiest way to do that, in my experience, is fitness. I've never met anyone, I truly haven't met anyone who was in a bad mood, went to the gym or went out for a run and got done with it and said, I'm in a worse mood now. I just don't know anyone who's ever, like, I don't think that is possible.
100%.
It is truly like medicine. And you and I have treated it as such, so much so that you've made a full-on incredible career out of it. When you were in that jail cell and your cellmate, said, we're going to work out, were you still active in using?
I was detoxing. So I detoxed for like 2-3 weeks in jail, which was horrible. I don't know anybody who's listening has ever gone through an opiate withdrawal, but anxiety through the roof, feels like you're trying to crawl out of your own skin, vomiting. That was one of the things when I got through my detox, he was like, we're going to start. And I was like, okay, whatever, man. And I just remember in that moment, man, you're like, you think you know everything until you realize you know nothing. And I think he told me what I needed to hear, not necessarily how I wanted to hear it. Was he looked me in the face one night. I was blaming my friends. I was blaming my situation. And he just looked at me and he said, quit being a bitch. And I was like, huh? And like, I guess, where I grew up and even like in jail, like, you don't want to be called a bitch, right? That's not like exactly something that's, you feel good about. And I said, what do you mean? He's like, you're blaming everybody for your problems, man. He's like, you're blaming this, you're blaming that. He's like, you made the choices to get yourself here. He's like, whether you want to admit it or not, you made the choices. He's like, there's plenty of people who grew up in a divorce home. There's plenty of people that were bullied, plenty of people that sucked at sports, and they aren't in jail. You are. And he said, you got two choices. You can man up, take responsibility for yourself, and know that if you're going to change, it's up to the man in the mirror. It's up to you, not anybody else. Or you can be a bitch, you go cry in the corner like everybody else and say, woe is me, blame everybody for my problems, and just use that as a crutch to never change. And in that moment, man, I was like, I hated hearing that, just as I think everybody else would. But it clicked, and I was like, wow, like, I needed to hear that, because I was like, he's right. Like, I have control. I felt empowered. And I think once you feel empowered to change, like, things can really change. And that's kind of what happened with me.
It sounds like that prison cellmate was your, like, literal, he was like a guardian angel, man. He was sent from above. Do you still stay in contact with him?
I tried through the years. It's funny, we actually grabbed like a legitimate workout when I first got out. And then, he went back in and kind of went back in and out. And we've kind of stayed in touch. I'm actually trying to get him on my podcast because everyone's kind of heard my perspective on that story, and I wanted to let him tell his. But we've gone back and forth. It's just trying to track him down. And I dedicated my first book to him. I'll never forget what he did for me. I mean, it's why I do what I do today. Is I asked him when I left. I said, "How am I ever going to repay you?" And he just said to pay it forward and not to mess up. And I still have the workout that he gave me framed in my place today, so I never forget where I came from. It's got some motivational messages on there, like telling me I'm no longer a fat ass.
What is the workout?
I forget exactly. I mean, it's in my other, it's like 5 sets of 10 push-ups. Well, it's like one day. And then it was like 5 sets of 20 crunches. And then, 5 sets of like 10 dips. It was just, it's crazy to look at. I was like, wow, this is my workout. Like, and now I'm doing, I mean, obviously I'm doing a bit more strenuous things, but it reminds me where I came from, man. I look at it and I'm like, you know what? Every time I want to bitch and moan or like, be like, wow, I'm like, not doing well in this area of my life, but I look at that paper and I'm like, you know what? Like, I'm lucky to be alive, and I'm just grateful. And I think so many people, man, they get caught up in this loop of comparison, and they really just, at the end of the day, when you die and you go to your grave, it's not like they're gonna be like, man, Doug Bopst, 5 million social media followers, $500 million in the bank, wrote 25 books. Like, they're not going to say that. They're going to talk about what kind of person I was, how I treated other people. Maybe they'll talk about my story of overcoming adversity, but so many people get caught up in the external like validation and intangibles of life, and they forget to like reel it back in and like focus on what's in front of them and what really matters. And hopefully, like if anything else during even like this COVID knockdown, people are starting to realize like what's important: human interaction, relationships, connection, being able to go outside, being able to like just sit down and have like a meal in a safe environment together that we all took for granted.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I absolutely do. I mean, I've been spending more time with my family. I feel like I'm more of a father now than I ever have been before. I've got 2 kids, and it's just, I hate to say that this whole entire global reset is a blessing, but for me, it's just been a very unique opportunity that I never thought I'd be able to have, being able to spend the time with my wife and my kids. I'm a business owner like you, and so when the world is normal, we're sort of in 5th gear most of the time. And so this has definitely been this crazy weird opportunity to focus on the things like you said that really matter, that you're not going to go to the grave with millions of dollars in your casket. You're going to go to the grave with either a heart filled with love or with shame and pain. And my choice today on a daily basis is to try to fill my heart with as much love as possible. I think that also starts with loving ourselves, loving ourselves. And I'm not ashamed to say that. I think that's such an important component to living a better life. This idea that we can't be of service and provide support, love, care in a real, authentic, genuine way if we hate who we are. That's my experience. We have to take action on a daily basis to continue this path of self-love. Self-love is as important as love that we share. So when you got out of prison, what was it, or jail? What was it like for you? Did you feel like you had a new lease on life?
Yeah, I mean, I just felt like this new empowerment. I was like, wow, I'm going to beat this. I'm going to do this, because I just had this confidence in who I was that I never had. I was like, wow, I'm not going to let my cellmate down. I'm not going to let, the people around me down. I'm going to change my habits. I'm going to change what I eat. Cause I mean, he got me on like a meal plan. Like, he gave me some advice on that. I'm going to change who I hang out with. And I remember a lot of nights I was living with my grandparents. I spent on the couch, ironically, watching like the Food Network, because they like watching the Food Network. So I was watching like, Giada and Bobby Flay and, Guy Fieri. I remember I probably watched like 4 million episodes of Diners, Drivers, and Dives. It was like, I just taught myself how to cook. I learned how to cook, through watching like the Food Network, because that was like a skill I never really had. I mean, I could like put in a Hot Pocket in the microwave and mac and cheese when I was stoned, like back in the day. But I really like started to enjoy like cooking. That was like therapeutic for me. So there was a lot of nights where I sacrificed, just like, I was like, all right, like I'm going to stay home with my grandparents and do this stuff, work on myself, and hope that other people, I would surround myself with other like-minded people in the future if I decided to get rid of the people in my past, right? And not that they were bad people, I just didn't align with where they were going. And so slowly but surely in the health and fitness community, as you know, like you're able to meet healthier people. And I ended up, getting a job as a trainer not too long after I got out of jail. It was probably a year and a half afterwards. And I felt like this new high because I had to beg for my job. Like I literally because I had a felony on my record. My job, my boss was like, I don't know about hiring you. You're a felon. And I was like, like I'll pee in a cup every single day. Just give me a chance. Fitness saved my life. Da da da. And they ended up hiring me, and I took the opportunity as a moment of gratitude, and I never looked back. Built a really successful training business in the first year.
I want to get into that for a little bit, but I have a question. Were you sober from the moment you got out of jail? Did you stay clean?
Yeah.
So that was a turning point for you in jail with not only fitness, but it was also sobriety.
Right.
I know a lot of people that have been in and out of jail and prison for short terms and long terms. And a lot of them say prison was the best thing that's ever happened to them. And it sounds like jail was the best thing that's happened to you. I mean, it just sounds like you were able to really sort of see yourself and understand that the only person that was standing in your way was you there, which I think is probably everyone's biggest misconception, that they are their biggest issue. It's no one else. But did you, like, when you got out of jail, was it a conscious decision to stay clean and make fitness your livelihood?
Yeah, I think for me, what the decision was more like I knew that I had a second chance, because when I went to court, the judge looked at me when I was 20, and he's like, I'm sentencing you to 5 years, and he convicted me of the felony, the intent to distribute marijuana, when I got arrested. And he's like, I'm sentencing you to 5 years, everything's suspended but 90 days, 5 years probation, 200 hours community service, all kinds of fines and drug classes. And he's like, but if you complete everything without messing up, I'll take the felony conviction off your record when that 5 years is up. So, but he was like, if I see you in here again, you're going to the big house. And so I knew I wouldn't last 30 seconds and I just knew the way I was, like it wasn't going to happen. So, when I got out, I had made a decision that I was going to commit to myself, Mike. Like I knew that if I had this blind faith to be relentless about becoming a better version of me, like doing everything necessary. And I didn't go to meetings. Like I didn't get sober in 12 step. Like I got, in jail, I got out. It's like, if I can run every day, if I can exercise, if I can eat good, if I can just build myself up and not use drugs every single day, I have a chance. Whereas if I don't do those things, and I know I don't have a chance. So like, it was just one day. And then sure enough, you look back and it's like, wow, like I haven't used drugs in like 3 weeks. Wow, I'm losing more weight. I'm feeling good about myself. And then 3 months go by and you're like, wow, I'm like running a 5K. And I'm able to do like a set of like 35 push-ups now. Like I'm like feeling better about myself and I'm more comfortable with my own skin. Like, and then like you look back and it's like, wow, I've gotten like 2 years. And then so you just, it's like this domino effect. And fitness was the catalyst for all that. And it wasn't that I guess at first I committed to never using drugs again. That wasn't my driving force was just to get better and prove people wrong. Because I mean, being an addict, I lost a bunch of friends growing up. Tons of people. I mean, when I say tons, I mean, when you lose like 7 or 8 people before you're 21 years old that you knew very well, that's a lot.
To overdose,
drinking and driving, car, just,
yeah,
it's a lot, it's not exactly we had a rough friend group. And so people, don't really understand what that's like unless they've gone through it themselves. So I just knew that I wanted to make it because so many people doubted me because the odds were so against me just because of my lifestyle up until that point. And because I was a felon and I have that above my head. And then I had the thing above my head that I had, all this trauma and I had, all this weight. And I was destined to fail. Right. And then like the more I started succeeding, I was literally using my pain and turning it into purpose. I was thinking, because I had all this anger inside of me, right? I had anger, towards people who bullied me. I had anger towards my parent, like all these things. But I learned how to channel it into into positive energy when I was in jail. Like my cellmate would always be like, think about what makes you angry. And I would think about that stuff. And it would just channel through me to the point where I just kind of like the energy moved, and I'm not saying that works for everybody, but not just me, it works for. I've heard it from a lot of people that you turn your pain into purpose because it's got to go somewhere. Those emotions are there, right? And so many people just bottle them up and stuff them down, and they hope that they'll never come out again, and they do. They'll come up in your relationships, they'll come out in your job, they'll come out in, other areas of your life. And so now I had this secret weapon that was like, all right, whenever I get stressed, my first move isn't, well, who can I get a pill from? Where can I get high? It was, let's go for a run. Let's go for a little walking meditation. Let's, call a loved one. Let's, turn on the food now. I mean, literally like turning on the food. I'm surprised I didn't see your episode. Maybe I did with, on Bobby Flay's show. Cause that was a show I used to watch, was like when he would cook off against like the contestants,
Beat Bobby Flay. Yeah.
And that was just soothing for me, and just to like check out. And now you see a lot of people are asking me how I continue to do it now. And it's just consistency and just doing the right things. And that's why I believe like inner circle is so key, because, you're not always going to be your best. You're not always going to feel 100%. You're not always going to feel at peace. I mean, as I'm doing this episode right now with you, as I'm talking, recording this, my grandfather got rushed to the emergency room on Saturday night with like a heart issue. Thought he was having a heart attack. And he had a stroke a few months ago, like a major stroke, was in the hospital, and, lost vision in his eye. So like, and he's like, they've been like my rock, since I got out of jail and even through growing up. And so just dealing with that, it's been like hard for me, because it's like my family, my parents, right? Almost. But I'm thankful that I have people around me and different, tools in my belt to combat that stress in a positive way. Right. And I think that's the difference between now and when I was a teenager. It's how I manage my emotions, how I manage situations. It's different. It's not the situations don't come up, because life happens. And I think a lot of people, they think like, oh, like the drugs are the problem. No, the drugs are the solution to your solution to whatever problems you were having. You just chose to do that. So like, you're still going to have problems. It's just how you manage it that counts.
Sorry about your grandfather, man.
No, so I mean, he's going to make it. I have confidence in that. So that, I was just showing up. I was just, really like just trying to prove a point that it's in real time. Like, this is what happens. This is like what goes on. And like, it's just about people, pedaling through in a positive way.
I had an experience that I actually shared with a buddy yesterday, where yesterday morning my wife was out on a run. I was watching the boys, and they're both amazing kids, but every once in a while, like kids do, they F up. And I looked over to my right. My older son's 5, my younger son's 2. I watched my older son pick up a yoga foam block, lift it up over his head, and just wing it at his younger brother. And his younger brother got sad. Obviously it didn't hurt too bad. It was a foam block, but I rarely raise my voice. I'm like with my kids, I could change the tone of my voice, but I never really raise my voice because I feel like that's scary as opposed to impactful. And so I walked over to Finn. I took his left shoulder with my left hand and his right shoulder with my right hand nicely. And I put my hands on his shoulders and I said, "Hey, Finn, that was a really terrible thing that you just did there. You know that you're supposed to protect your brother, not, do anything that could potentially hurt him." And he looked at me and he got really sad and he started crying. And then right after he did that, I gave him a hug and then he ran away. He ran up into his room. And that was such a powerful thing for me to witness, because I saw that he truly wanted to run away from this problem. There was a problem. He addressed it. He knew that he had done something wrong, was told he did something wrong, and then he ran away from it. And then I went up to his room and I looked at him and I said, "Hey, bud, making mistakes is okay. We all are going to make mistakes. Running away from your mistake is adding a mistake on top of a mistake. And that is not okay. We should really sort of like be okay to ourselves and kind to ourselves, and understand what we've done. And it was just like me trying to teach my son an invaluable lesson that I've learned over the years, right? Like, making mistakes is totally fine and okay. But our response to those mistakes could be the difference between jail or not jail, life and death, positive and negative. And I believe that as we become a little bit more comfortable with ourselves, we give ourselves a little bit more time to appreciate to appreciate a situation before we react to it. We give ourselves a little bit more time to respond, because responding is so much more powerful than reacting. I also want to say one other thing, because I know that we've gone deep into recovery here, and I don't talk enough about it, like I said earlier, and I don't think people talk enough about it. But I think you're such a great example of someone who essentially lost it all and has built back this life as a young person. And I know today, and I'm sure you know today, that there's probably nothing you cannot do. Obviously time, it's just time, but if you were to say to me, hey, Mike, I want to be an astronaut. If you put in 20 years starting today, there's a chance that you could be an astronaut in 15, 20 years if you actually wanted to do it and put in the time. There's nothing I believe today that I cannot do, maybe outside of being like the president of the United States. When we are able to take responsibility for our actions and really own up to the decisions that we make, I believe the sky's the limit for what we're capable of. And I think that you are a great example of that. Is there, do you feel that way? Do you feel that there's sort of no limit to what you're capable of as long as you stay on the path?
Yeah, I think what achieving some things, like even through fitness and everything else, it does is it builds up like equity in your confidence bank, right? Because I think so many times what builds confidence in people is achieving things you never thought you could do. Like, I never thought I could beat addiction. I never thought I could be able to run a mile. I never thought I'd be able to like have a six pack. I never thought I'd be able to, run a 5K. I never thought any of that stuff. But then I did it. And then I was like, oh, what's next? I'm going to write a book. Well, I barely graduated high school. I didn't think I could do that. I'm going to write a book. Oh, like, I'm going to, get on the, a major media outlet and share my story. Like, oh, I was able to do. And so you just start building these things. And I'm not saying that that's like it's not the external validation, so to speak, that builds you up on the inside. It's the internal belief in doing something that scares you, that you weren't comfortable in doing, that builds that up. That makes sense, right? It's not like me being on the Today Show, like, filled me up in confidence. It was like, wow, like, now that I'm on this, like, I'm like, I feel so great about myself. It wasn't that itself. It was the fact that I looked at how far I had come, and I'm like, wow, like 5 years ago, I was scared of in my own shadow to like share my story. And here I am on like one of the biggest media outlets, having the confidence in myself to open up and share. And like, wow, like how far have I come? Like, and it was just staying committed to a vision I set a vision. I was like, I want to share my story with as many people as possible to inspire them to become the best version of themselves. And then like you stay true to that, and you just do the things every single day that align with that. Like we talked about the One Thing book, right? And everything kind of aligns with that. And I think we have choices, man, like what we're going to do. And so many people sell themselves short because they just don't want to take that one first step, that one risk. Like, they look at me now and they look at all the stuff I've done, but they don't see like 7 years ago, like my first interview, where I was like hunched over, I was timid, I was like nervous. Like, it takes work. And so many people, they try to like jump to the top of the mountain without even like trying to walk up the mountain. They don't see like the climb. That's where the confidence equity gets built, is on the climb, man. It's not just a smooth walk. You take 3, 4, 5 steps and you fall a little bit. You take 3, 4, 5 steps, you get sidetracked. 3, 4, 5 steps. It's just this momentum of continuing to learn from your mistakes, learn from your failure, that as you're going up the mountain, you're getting stronger. As you're going up that mountain, you're getting wiser. As you're going up that mountain, you're getting braver, and you get to the top. And not only have you built something amazing, you're stronger because of it.
I think if I could sum it up in one word, what you've done and what I've done, it's about commitment, and it's about going from a boy to a man, from a girl to a woman, and with that, I think commitment is probably one of the most important elements to any sort of success, whether it's in relationships, whether it's in business, whether it's in personal happiness. It's truly committing to something on a daily basis. So you've written books, you've won some awards, you've got a great podcast. I mean, you've done a lot, man. It's really inspiring. I want to ask you some questions about the fitness world, because I think a lot of people are always curious to know, and I think you're a good guy to ask. I'm sure you talk to a lot of people as a personal trainer that want to get started on their journey in fitness and nutrition, and a small percentage of them really get into it and go for it, and probably a larger percentage of them are not able to stay on the beam, is what I would imagine. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, you see a lot of people, they go head on and they go full speed and they're in it, but then they kind of fall off.
What kind of advice can you give to someone who really wants to change their life for the better when it comes to fitness and nutrition?
I always say, choose your suck, man. It's gonna suck to get dedicated to changing your nutrition. It's gonna suck to getting up early. It's gonna suck to drink more water instead of alcohol or soda or whatever you're drinking before. It's gonna suck to move your body. But you gotta look at, like, do you want to have that to suck, or what else? What also sucks is if you don't do anything in 6 months, 6 years go down the road, and you look back, you've gained more weight, you might have diabetes, high blood pressure, you're depressed. You gotta choose which suck you want, man.
Choose your suck.
Choose your suck. I mean, obviously it's different thing on the person, but most people, like, they can see that because they're like, wow, like, you're right. Like, both of them will result in me feeling poor, about me feeling like somewhat of adversity, right? There's adversity in making these changes, but there's also adversity in not doing it. And then on top of that, like, I don't think people need to change all at once. I just think it's like building habits. Like, okay, like maybe like for a week or two, you try just drinking more water, half your body weight, or, that's what I try and tell people to start. And then you can maybe build on that with the vegetables, and you build on that with the protein, and then sure enough, you have this Rolodex of habits over the course of 2-3 months, which is better than trying to hit it all at once and then it being unsustainable, because for the last 40 years, you've been doing the polar opposite of that, right? And that's what I say to people. I'm like, all right, well, for 40 years, you've been doing nothing. So why not take 2 or 3 months and build something slow and consistent, and have a solid foundation to build upon, so you don't fall on your face.
If there's people out there that are looking to get into the personal training world, are there any steps that you would suggest taking? Is there any certificates or certifications rather that you think are worth the time?
I mean, I would always just kind of make sure that, like, when I tell people, make sure it's like a nationally accredited one, so that way, if your vision is to go and work in a gym, or go into a place where, I mean, that's where most people will start, with the gym, in a gym, and they don't just go and just be like, oh, I'm going to get certified and then open a gym. I mean, there's obviously some that do that, but the majority don't. So make sure it's something like ACE or NASM. I'm NSCA, like National Strength and Conditioning Association, which is one of the big 3 or 4. And then, like, just really work on, like, building relationships with people. Try to train as many people as you can for free. Put yourself out there. Talk about your story. Talk about why you got into fitness. Because remember, people aren't gonna relate to, like, the cool lunge or the cool squat. They're gonna relate to, like, why you're doing it and how you can help them feel better about themselves. That's one of the things I see trainers make a mistake. They're like, they get all these degrees and certifications, but they can't talk to anybody. That serves no purpose in personal training. They're better off, going into, like, medical field, with all that qualification. So just work on serving, helping people, and relating to them with where they're at.
I've had so much fun chatting with you, dude. You are like truly a positive beam of light and inspiring, and I think this podcast will be a huge asset for people that are just looking for a little positivity today, or really struggling in the depths of addiction like you and I have in our past, or just looking to sort of learn a little bit more about fitness and better living. I'm honored that you joined me on the show. I'm super honored to have been on your show. And I would just say, man, keep inspiring us by doing what you're doing. And, life is way too long for us to waste time with the bad news. And I appreciate you, man.
I appreciate you too, man. This has been fun, and like, I congratulate you and commend you for everything you've accomplished and how you're helping people and changing lives as well, man. So I look forward to this.
Awesome, brother. Well, I'm sure I'll see you soon or speak to you soon anyway. And last question. Were you born or were you made?
I was made, man. I mean, I was actually thinking about that because I know you asked that question at the end. I, I look at myself and I look at everything when I was a child, when I was a kid. I don't think I could have been a personal trainer. I don't think I could have been doing the things that I'm doing now without going through what I went through. So I definitely think life kind of made me into who I am.
You're a made man. I love it.
Appreciate you, man.
Have a great rest of your day. Stay safe out there and stay positive, and much love.